Hey there, Sam Shah, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. In this video, I want to talk to you about one of the most important things throughout your recruiting process, kind of the foundation for everything else you're going to do in recruiting, and that's your application materials, and more specifically, your resume or your CV. Okay. Now, when it comes to your having a great resume for investment banking recruiting, there's really two aspects to it. One is the substance of your resume and what's on there, and the other one is really the formatting of how you put it together and how you package everything together in the most marketable way possible, right? And so, speaking of the first one in terms of the substance, here are the things that the bankers really want to see, right? In an ideal world, if you were to build the prototypical investment banking candidate from scratch, you would go to a great school, a target school. You would have a really good GPA, ideally 3.7 or above. You would have relevant work experience in finance, perhaps at a small investment bank or private equity firm or something of that nature. You would have extracurricular activities. You're in the relevant organizations on campus, whether it's student-run investment funds or finance clubs or investment banking clubs or whatnot, right? And then last but not least, having relevant skills and also having interests that make you stand out, right? And something you can kind of connect with the interviewers over. So those are kind of some of the substance portion of what makes a good resume. Now, here's the thing. Most candidates do not have every single one of these things. If you do have every single one of these things, that's awesome, you're in great shape. But more often than not, we find that people are typically either missing, a great GPA, or they don't have the most relevant experiences, or they're not in the best school. And usually there's something that's kind of missing, right? And so that's totally fine. You don't have to check every single box for you to be able to get an investment banking job. But of course, you want to check as many of these boxes as you possibly can, right? Now, setting that aside though, that's not something that will change overnight. One thing that will do wonders for you in terms of your resume is how you actually format everything and how you write about your experiences and how you craft these bullet points and kind of just like the marketing aspect of it, right? There's the substance side and then there's the marketing side. So here on screen, you see a resume from one of our previous clients, and this was her resume when she first started working with us. Okay, so she had she went to basically Wellesley, okay, which is not really necessarily a target school. It's more of a liberal arts school, right? She did have a great GPA, but she didn't really have any relevant experience in finance. Most of her experience was in consulting and marketing and things like that, right? Now, what we were able to do for her when she came in, the first thing we did was we had to redo the way she was presenting all this information. Right? So we basically went in, we took the exact same set of experiences, and we made a bunch of changes to it. Okay. Now, this is what that looked like, right? When we actually marked it up and we gave her the comments, we rewrote the bullet points, we formatted everything in a much more aesthetically pleasing way just to make it a lot more marketable and to show what the bankers actually want to see. And this was the final product, right? Or the near final product. So you look at this resume and then you look at the original resume, you can kind of see there's a big difference, right? Which one do you think looks better? This one, obviously, right? And so that's why I always say two different people with the exact same set of experiences can have completely different looking resumes. And the reason why it's so important to make sure that your resume looks good is because most bankers, when they're reviewing resumes, they're getting a ton of applications and they're very, very busy. So they're trying to go through hundreds of, if not thousands of resumes at a time. They're spending no more than 10 or 20 or at most 30 seconds on each resume. What that means is they're not actually reading every single bullet point line by line. They're actually just skimming it. And a lot of whether they like your resume or not is actually just based on their first impression. And so if the presentation is really good, it looks like, wow, you're really accomplished, you've done a lot, right? But if your presentation is bad, even though it's the exact same set of experiences, all of a sudden it looks like you're not as impressive of a candidate. Okay? So that's why this is so important. And the way we help our clients do this, by the way, is we actually have this super detailed checklist for the resume. We call it the master checklist. And we actually went through and counted how many items we have on this checklist. It's about 3 pages long, but it's got over 60, I think over 60 boxes that you have to check through to make sure that everything you're supposed to do has been done. And if you're able to do that, then that's basically going to give you this end product, right? And so this is the same process that we put every single client through, and it's so important because if you don't have a good resume, when you start to network for these investment banking referrals that you're trying to get for, because you want to get referred for the interviews, right? Simply applying online nowadays, most of the time is not going to work in terms of getting that interview. But when you're trying to network with these bankers, a lot of times they're going to size you up first by looking at your resume. And if your resume is not in good shape, nothing personal, but they get so many networking requests, they can't possibly talk to everyone. They're just going to throw your resume in the trash and they're not even going to talk to you. That's why a lot of people get ghosted when they reach out to network. Now, if you have a solid resume and you look super accomplished and you look like a great candidate, then they're going to be much more willing to talk to you because everybody's always looking for good student or good candidates that they can refer to their own employer, right? So that's why this is so important. I just want to share this video with you guys so you understand what really needs to be done. And so ask yourself, does your resume look more similar to something like this, what you're seeing on the screen right now, or does it look something closer to this, or perhaps even worse than this? If it looks something like this or worse than this, then you've got a lot of work to do, right? But if you're more like this, then I would say your resume is in pretty good shape, and now you can actually move on and worry about all the other aspects of recruiting, like networking and interview prep and things like that. All right. So hopefully this was helpful to you guys. Now please go and watch the other videos below this. Okay.